The ballroom shimmered in gold and crystal, filled with the soft clinking of glasses and conversations, polished as carefully as the marble. Floors beneath them. Cameras flashed near the stage, where a large screen displayed the smiling photograph of a 6-year-old boy with wide brown eyes and a dimple on his left cheek. His name was Daniel Whitmore, missing for 3 months. At the center of the room stood Victoria Whitmore, draped in a silver gown that caught the light with every trembling breath she took. To the world, she was a powerhouse, the founder of a tech empire worth billions, a woman whose signature could shift markets. Tonight, however, she was only a mother. She adjusted the microphone, with steady fingers that betrayed nothing of the storm inside her. "Thank you for being here," she began, her voice refined and measured. "Every donation tonight brings us closer to finding my son." The room responded with sympathetic murmurs. Influential figures nodded. Reporters leaned forward. They had seen her on every network, her composure unwavering as she offered rewards, hired private investigators, and coordinated with law enforcement. She had not cried in public, not once, but they had not seen her at 3 a.m. Sitting on the cold tile floor of Daniel's bedroom, clutching his small sweater to her chest, inhaling the fading scent of baby shampoo and sunshine. Daniel had disappeared from the private playground behind their gated estate. One moment he was laughing, chasing a red ball. The next he was gone. Security footage had glitched for exactly 7 minutes. 7 minutes that swallowed her child whole. Victoria finished her speech and stepped away from the stage as applause filled the hall. She felt none of it. She moved through the crowd like a ghost draped in diamonds, smiling when expected, thanking donors, nodding at promises of help. Every face blurred into one. Near the edge of the ballroom, by a table where the catering staff waited discreetly, stood a girl of about 14. She wore a simple black uniform, slightly too big for her thin frame. Her dark hair was pulled back tightly, revealing sharp cheekbones and eyes that seemed too old for her age. The girl had been staring at the screen with Daniel's photo for the past 20 minutes. Victoria noticed her only because the girl was not pretending. She wasn't whispering to anyone or checking her phone. She was staring as if the image were burning into her memory. Something about that gaze tugged at Victoria. She approached slowly, ignoring the curious glances of her guests. The girl lowered her eyes when she realized she was being watched. "Is everything all right?" Victoria asked gently. The girl swallowed. Up close, Victoria could see her hands trembling, slightly as she gripped the edge of the serving tray. "Ma'am," the girl said, her voice barely audible. "I know that missing child." The world stopped. The chatter of the ballroom faded into a distant hum. Victoria felt as if the floor had tilted beneath her. "What did you say?" she whispered. The girl looked up, fear flickering across her face. "I've seen him." Victoria's breath hitched. For a second, she thought she might faint. She steadied herself on the table. "Where?" The word tore from her throat. The girl hesitated, glancing toward the supervisor across the room. "Not here," she murmured. "Please." Victoria did not think. She led the girl through a side corridor, past the restrooms, into a quiet lounge reserved for private meetings. Her heart pounded so violently she could hear it in her ears. "Tell me," she said once the door closed. The girl clasped her hands together. "My name is Amara. I help my aunt at a small grocery store on Maple Street. About 2 months ago, a man started coming in with a little boy. The boy looked like him," she gestured vaguely, as if the image were floating between them. "Same eyes, same smile." Victoria's knees weakened. "Are you sure?" Amara nodded. He looked scared. Not crying, just quiet. The man always held his shoulder tight. Too tight. Victoria felt the room spin. She had replayed countless scenarios in her mind. But hearing this from a stranger was different. It was real, tangible. "Why didn't you say something sooner?" Victoria asked, though there was no accusation in her voice, only desperation. Amara's eyes filled with tears. "I didn't know. I saw him on the news later. I thought maybe it was just a coincidence. Rich people's kids all look... she faltered, ashamed. Victoria reached out instinctively and touched the girl's arm. The contact startled them both. "Please," Victoria said, her voice cracking for the first time in months. "Take me there." Within the hour, security teams and private investigators were mobilized. Victoria insisted on going herself, ignoring protests. The black car sped through the city, leaving behind the glittering skyline for quieter streets, where the streetlights flickered and storefronts were modest and worn. Maple Street smelled of fried food and damp concrete. The grocery store was small, its neon sign buzzing faintly. Amara led them inside. "This is it," she said. Victoria's eyes scanned every corner, every shadow. The shelves were stocked with canned goods and cheap snacks. A bell above the door jingled as they entered, and a tired woman looked up from behind the counter. "Amara, why are you—" The woman stopped when she saw the security. Personnel in Victoria's unmistakable face. "This is my aunt," Amara whispered. Victoria stepped forward. "Has a man been coming here with a little boy?" Brown hair, about this tall. She held her hand at chest height. The aunt's expression changed. Fear. Recognition. "Yes," she admitted slowly. "He rents the apartment upstairs." Victoria's breath caught painfully in her chest. Within minutes, the police who had been alerted were on their way. The apartment door upstairs was locked. Victoria stood at the bottom of the narrow staircase, unable to move, her entire body shaking. What if it wasn't him? What if hope shattered again? The officers forced the door open. A silence followed, thick, suffocating. Then a voice. "Mommy?" It was small, hoarse, fragile. Victoria did not remember climbing the stairs. She did not remember pushing past the officers. She only remembered the sight of him. Daniel sat on a worn sofa, a thin blanket wrapped around his shoulders. His hair was longer, his cheeks thinner, but his eyes were the same, wide, brown, her entire world. "Daniel," she breathed. He stared at her as if unsure she were real. Then he ran. When he collided with her, the force nearly knocked her over. She fell to her knees, clutching him so tightly she feared she might hurt him. His small hands gripped her dress, his face pressed into her neck. "You came back," he whispered. Victoria broke. The sound that left her was raw, torn from somewhere deep and ancient. Months of controlled interviews, composed statements, dignified pleas dissolved in an instant. She sobbed into her son's hair, her shoulders shaking violently. "I never left you," she cried. "I never stopped looking." The officers found the man attempting to flee through a back exit. He was apprehended quickly. The details would unravel later. Motives dissected, security failures analyzed. None of it mattered in that moment. All that mattered was the warmth of her child's body against hers. Hours later, as dawn painted the sky pale pink, Victoria sat in the back of an ambulance with Daniel wrapped in a medical blanket. Paramedics checked him gently. He was malnourished but alive, frightened but unharmed. Amara stood a few feet away, watching quietly. Victoria stepped out and approached her. For a moment, words failed her. "You saved my son," Victoria said finally. Amara shook her head. "I just spoke." Victoria studied the girl's thin jacket, the exhaustion in her eyes. Sometimes speaking is the bravest thing. Tears slid down Amara's cheeks. "I was scared." "So was I," Victoria admitted. In that fragile morning light, status meant nothing. Wealth meant nothing. Two human beings stood bound by fear and courage. Weeks passed. Daniel recovered slowly, waking from nightmares that left him clinging to his mother. Victoria canceled meetings, delegated responsibilities, chose bedtime stories over boardrooms. Each laugh from Daniel felt like a miracle. One afternoon, Victoria visited Maple Street again, this time alone. The grocery store looked the same, but she felt different walking in. Amara stood behind the counter. Victoria placed a folder on the counter. "It's a scholarship," she explained. "For any school you want, and a trust fund for your future." Amara's eyes widened. "Ma'am, I didn't do it for—" "I know," Victoria interrupted softly. "That's why you deserve it." Amara stepped around the counter and hugged her. It was awkward at first, then fierce. That night, Victoria tucked Daniel into bed. He traced her face with small fingers. "Are you going to work tomorrow?" he asked. "Not tomorrow," she said. He smiled sleepily. "Good." After he fell asleep, Victoria sat beside him, watching his steady breathing. She thought of the ballroom, of the polished speeches and flashing cameras. She thought of a quiet girl in a borrowed uniform who chose courage over silence. For the first time since Daniel vanished, Victoria allowed herself to feel something beyond fear.